So we got the recording going there. Let's see. Interesting. I don't see a record button on you. If you try more, is one of those options record?
I think I recorded, yeah.
Okay, you are recording. Perfect. Thank you. I didn't have the little icon didn't pop up, but now it's showing. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Jennifer Epp, but this is our third public outreach meeting during the public comment period for the general permit for discharges from domestic wastewater systems with flows greater than 100,000 gallons a day that discharge to land. And I know some of you have joined some of the other presentations that we've had over the last couple weeks. If you haven't joined us before, welcome and thanks for spending the time with you today. Go ahead and go to the next slide for me, Tim. So today our meeting objectives are to give a brief overview of some of the responses to the questions that we've received on the draft general permit so far, and to open up the meeting for any questions that you have on the general permit. We have had some conversations with some of you already directly, and so we'll go through some of those questions. And as always, if you have specific comments or questions about your particular facility and want to talk to us offline, feel free to reach out to us and we will look forward to that. Next slide. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Howard to go through the first few questions that we've received. And if you can introduce yourself at the beginning too, that'd be great, Howard.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Howard Kolb. I'm staff in the WDR unit, which is the Waste Discharge Requirements Unit, and I've helped draft the current order and monitoring program. We've had a number of meetings, we've had some questions, and what we're going to go over real quickly is about 5 or 6 questions that came up in an individual meeting with an individual facility, and they are more detailed questions, and I'll just leave it at that. One of the questions they were asking is, will you clarify the various pond types? Because we have perk ponds, storage ponds, things like that. And so we are updating the definitions in the general permit to be clear about what type of pond we're referring to in the order. Next slide, please. Another question that came up was could they use their water supply sampling information that's required by the Division of Drinking Water in place of the monitoring required in the order? And yes, the order does say you're allowed to do that. You do have to make a request to the executive officer. So you talk to us and we'd run it by the boss. And if we all agree it's okay, that is what will go into your monitoring report and program. If you open the monitoring program, page D2, section 2, you can see where it says make the request based on your well identification number, etc. Next slide, please, Tim. Another monitoring question that came up is the monitoring program, the way it's written, covers all different kinds of sampling, and water board staff have created it as a template for what people will be required to do in their monitoring program. So everybody's monitoring program will be tailored to their particular facility. So what you see in the monitoring program is sort of a first cut, but as we talk to you about your specific facility, if we need to change a grab sample to a composite sample or the frequency, we will work with the dischargers to get a monitoring program that is representative of their system. And again, that monitoring program will be part of your enrollment. You'll get an enrollment letter as well as a tailored monitoring program. Right now, I'm going to turn it over to Kelsey, and she's going to answer the next few questions. Next slide, please, Tim.
Thanks, Howard. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelsey Gerhardt. I'm a staff water resource control engineer here in Region 3, and I work in both the WDR program and the site cleanup program. So another question that we received, they asked for clarification on the pH effluent limitations specified in tables 3, 4, and 5 of the draft general permit. So the pH effluent limitations specified in these tables are pulled from our Central Coast Water Board's basin plan. Just to clarify, the pH effluent limitation should read, must not be less than 6.5 or greater than 8.4, and that these pH values shown in these tables are a range and not an average or a maximum. Next slide, please. Perfect. Another question received, if the discharger proceeds to implement groundwater monitoring, can they use their existing groundwater monitoring well network? So the answer is yes, provided the discharger demonstrates the existing groundwater monitoring program complies with the requirements specified in both the general permit and in the monitoring and reporting program, or the MRP. Some of these requirements include that this monitoring well network must consist of 3 shallow groundwater monitoring wells to establish groundwater gradient, groundwater flow velocity and direction, and evaluate groundwater quality influenced by the wastewater disposal. Another requirement, it must be on a scale sufficient to determine potential impacts and be sufficiently representative of groundwater conditions up gradient and down gradient of the permitted disposal area. Next slide, please. And the last question we received is who's authorized to collect these groundwater samples? So as specified in the MRP, a qualified person trained in proper procedures for collecting samples for constituents specified in the Monitoring Reporting Program, or MRP, must collect representative samples of groundwater from the monitoring wells. And we're happy to clarify if there's any further questions regarding this. And next slide, please. So here's our contact information. Please don't hesitate to contact Jennifer or myself with any questions that you may have. Howard's going to be in and out of the office. You can feel free to reach out to him as well. It may be a couple days before he responds. So if you have any questions, again, please do not hesitate to contact us or set up individual meetings or phone calls. We're happy to do that. And with that, I will pass it back to Jennifer.
Thanks, Kelsey. I have the next slide, Tim. This is a slide that some of you have seen before, a reminder of where you can find the draft documents, the draft permit, and you can also, in lieu of following this URL, you can also do a search for Central Coast Water Board tentative orders, and you will get a link to this. Similarly, this is the path where you can sign up for our interested parties list, and in lieu of this long URL, you can also search for Central Coast Water Board interested parties list, and you can find this URL. And a reminder that our formal comments are due at 9 o'clock on July 20th. Next slide, Tim. And this is what the interested parties list looks like when you go to the webpage. Next slide. And a reminder that we're going to have another meeting next week, July 15th at 10:30. And similarly to today, we will be available to answer questions. And if there are questions that we've heard between now and then that we want to make sure and share with everybody, we will do that like we did today. Next slide. And with that, I'll turn it over to the group and see if there are any questions. And I think, so you can either raise your hand if that works for you, or if not, you can unmute yourself and let us know that you have a question. So far I don't see any questions. So I'll give that just another minute or two to make sure that someone's not trying to figure out how to either unmute themselves or to raise their hand, either one. And I'm fairly sure that we made it such that people could unmute themselves, but yes, I'm just double checking that. Let's see, Howard, you had something that you wanted to make sure that I covered, or you want to?
I'll just say, if anybody in the audience has site-specific questions that you'd like to discuss offline, please don't hesitate to call us and make a meeting. We had a meeting with a facility just earlier this week, spent 2 hours answering questions to their specific facility. And it was very productive. So I encourage everybody else out there that if you have questions and that are specific to your facility that you want answered, don't hesitate to give any of us a call and we can set up a meeting or try and answer them right there on the phone.
Great. Yes, Howard. Thank you. Okay, I don't see that we have any questions. We can certainly stay on for a few minutes if questions pop up, but I will let the group know that the recordings for the previous 2 meetings as well as this meeting will be posted at the same place that you found the general permit. And if you're on our interested parties list, you received a copy of the slides as well as a link to those videos, and we'll do the same thing after this meeting. We'll send out to the interested parties list a copy of the slides as well as a link to this recording once we process it onto our Water Board YouTube channel. So with that, I'll close things up unless anyone wants to. I guess maybe we'll just do a test. So Christina or Cecile, can you unmute yourself and ask a question? That way we make sure that for some reason people aren't trying to.
I think, can you hear me?
Let's see. Oh, Christina unmuted herself.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear
I'm
me?
muted too.
All right.
Okay. Perfect. So it is working. We just have a quiet group today, and that's okay. So with that, I'll thank everybody for their time and for joining us. And we look forward to hearing from you and seeing what other questions you have about the draft permit. Thanks. Go ahead and stop the recording if you'd like.